having him right now is obviously something that I'm not happy with, but you know, we got to keep it going as a team.
Told that Josh Jacobs drove his car to the Raiders facility, was sitting in it with teammate Max Crosby at the deadline in case something came together. Obviously, that did not end up happening.
Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Jacobs seems like he believes in the Las Vegas Raiders right now. He has reached a new contract with the team. He's expected to be back soon, and this changes everything for the 2023 season for the Las Vegas Raiders. But how did this come about? Why did this happen out of nowhere, and what took so long? Make sure to like and subscribe for more Raiders content. So we know Josh Jacobs has been holding out for several months, and that has all come to an end. It got nasty. He started saying cryptic messages on social media. He even started arguing with fans about the value of himself as a player. He even had his agent of Black Label Sports say some words about Dave Ziegler. But I think there's one reason why the Raiders and Jacobs were able to agree on a new contract. And I think it was this guy at this preseason game who started talking to Dave Ziegler, telling him to make it happen, telling him to put some incentives in there. You hear that right there? Hey, give him at least 11 to 12 million. And that ended up being exactly what happened. Shortly after Dave Ziegler talked to that fan, a deal materialized, and now Josh Jacobs is going to make up to 12 million. Looking a little closer at the contract, it's actually 11.8 million with some per game roster bonuses, so he can make up to 12 million, 200,000 in incentives. And this is actually a little more than Saquon Barkley, so the Raiders went with that option. They went with the Saquon Barkley option, give Jacobs a little extra this year on top of the tag to incentivize him to come and play on the tag. Now, the problem is Jacobs does not have a long-term contract still, and he can actually still be tagged by the Raiders next year. But here's the tricky situation about being tagged next year. Because of the value of the deal, because it's higher than Saquon Barkley's technically, because there's some incentives in there, the second franchise tag for Josh Jacobs becomes a lot more expensive if they tag the guy in 2024. It'll be about 14 million. So even though I'm so stoked that we at least have Josh Jacobs this year, we're going to get into that, how that changes everything for the Raiders this season. But this is going to come back up next year, and we're going to have to revisit it again, and hopefully the Raiders and Jacobs will be able to reach a long-term contract. I think the Raiders started to realize how much the rest of the league valued Josh Jacobs. You had the Miami Dolphins try to trade for Josh Jacobs. They have also been interested in Jonathan Taylor, and the Raiders said no. The Raiders said they weren't interested in trading him. But if Jacobs really didn't want to play with the Raiders, that was definitely going to be a possibility. So the Raiders must have known that Jacobs didn't want to move. Jacobs wanted to stay in Vegas, wanted to stay with the team that drafted him, and wanted to continue to play. He just wanted to be paid fairly and was probably a little upset that they did not reach a long-term deal. And not only were the Miami Dolphins interested in Josh Jacobs, but you also had the Chiefs and Broncos reportedly interested in this guy. And this is when things started getting crazy. We thought there'd be a possibility that the Raiders would have to rescind the tag, and then Jacobs would have been a free agent able to sign anywhere. Luckily, and thank the Lord that did not happen, that we did not have to see one of our guys in a freaking Chiefs uniform. But I think the Raiders started to realize, you got the Dolphins, you got AFC West rivals, you got all these people interested in Josh Jacobs. We need to make it work out with this guy, because if not, he could end up going elsewhere. And look, the Raiders tried to be all Patriot way and tried to be freaking hard ass and not really compromise with this guy, and they were not negotiating with him for the longest time. They were not offering him a Saquon Barkley type deal with incentives. They were not doing any of that. They were trying to just make this guy play on the tag, and it was not making him happy. And there was a deal not even close. You had Jacobs' agent saying some negative things. You had Jacobs clearly being negative about the Raiders on social media. And I'm actually glad that the Raiders finally kind of came to their senses and realized, hey, even though we're freaking Patriots West over here and we're Mr. Hard Ass and we never compromised with players, I think we should listen to that fan and give this guy a couple extra incentives just to make him show up so he could be a happy Josh Jacobs. And when you get a happy Josh Jacobs, it's quite nice. He's the player. And I thought this was held by Derrick Henry for the longest time, but no, the player with the most missed tackles forced on run since 2019 is Josh Jacobs. Since he entered the league, he has had 267 missed tackles forced. yes, we want to praise offensive linemen, but it's undeniable that Josh Jacobs creates more yards after contact, regardless of what the offensive line does. And even though the running back position is devalued, that is something that is so special, and no one else in the world does it better than Josh Jacobs right now. And like we said, things are getting bad. Look at Jacobs' likes. You could just go through this dude's likes and see a bunch of crazy stuff that he was liking that was very anti-Raiders. You have him liking this post by Vic Tafur. Do it or don't do it. The Raiders don't get points for trying a save face offer at the last minute. It's such a weird flex. It wasn't that close. Hope Jacobs had the AC and some good tunes on waiting in the parking lot. And that was the sad thing. People try to act like, oh, Josh Jacobs was so close with getting a deal done with the Raiders. He was even in the parking lot. When really the guy was just hoping for a miracle, and the Raiders weren't talking to the dude, and he showed up at the parking lot on his own volition, hoping that a deal would get done, and it didn't happen, and he felt ghosted by the Raiders. That's why he's liking tweets like this. But then you saw him sort of warm up over time through his likes. He ended up liking this post where Davante Adams was asked about Josh Jacobs. Davante Adams mentions that he has been franchise tagged before, knows what it's like, and tried to just explain to the guy that he's kind of in a screwed position and they could still make some good money and do some special things this year if he comes back. And on August 15th, just like 10 days ago, Jacobs liked this post where it says, crazy that people are still thinking it is about annual numbers when it comes to the Josh Jacobs contract situation. I truly believe that if the Raiders offered fair guaranteed money, we wouldn't be talking about this. Jacobs is still upset about the guarantees thing. So the Raiders, if he balls out again, better not screw this up again. But now Jacobs is liking good things. He's liking his agent saying he's back. He just posted that he's back. Brandon Bolden's reacting to it, saying, let's effing go. And we heard Jacobs talk about how the hero may turn into a villain if he gets disrespected in contract negotiations. Well, now we have a happy villain on our team, ready to go up against the Denver Broncos week 1. Keep in mind, Sean Payton was sort of trying to poach Josh Jacobs. We know the Chiefs and the Broncos were interested, and now he's going to be going up against those teams, and he's going to be showing them how valuable he really is. And now everything is just so different for the Raiders offense. Look at, you got the best running back in the world right now who's ready to go. He's going to be at practice Sunday, going to be training 2 weeks before the first game. And we know the Raiders have great offensive weapons. We know the offensive line has been improving over the past 2 years. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm personally not stoked on him. I don't think he's the greatest quarterback. I think he's barely mid. I think Aiden O'Connell has more promise, has more upside than Jimmy Garoppolo, but you still have a competent QB, somebody who's going to be a good placeholder for now, a good bridge QB. So that's really the only question marks on this offense at all. Great receivers, offensive line a little shaky on the right side. Illuminor's been rising, but we know that interior right side's always been a question mark. And the tight end position, we finally got Michael Mayer back. We saw him in this past preseason game, but we don't know for sure if he's living up to the hype of Michael Mayer, if he's going to live up to the hype of Darren Waller. But in the meantime, you still have a lot of great wide receivers, the best running back in the NFL. This is a great offense on paper. The Raiders are spending some of the highest money on their offense in the NFL compared to other teams, especially at the wide receiver position. This is a no excuses offense for Josh McDaniels. There is no reason why Josh McDaniels should not have a top 10 offense in the NFL. And there is no reason with the roster that the Raiders have, even though the defense is not perfect at all. They have still made some roster moves. They have still invested in free agency. The Raiders really have no excuses, and this should be a playoff team based on the investment in this team. So I'm glad that Josh Jacobs is back. It means the sky is the limit for this season. Let me know your record predictions now for the Raiders. Now that Josh Jacobs is back, obviously this increases the Raiders' record projections, and I'm sure a lot of fantasy football players are happy now that Josh Jacobs is back. But we're dropping Raiders content all the time. Make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next one. My name is WiFiWillie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.